Okay, welcome back. My name is Brandon. In this tutorial we're going to start getting into modeling and texturing in specific ways. Specifically we'll be working with the UV texture editor. The UV texture editor deals with UVs, go figure. UVs are basically a 2D way of representing or mapping out a three-dimensional object. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to make a cube and divide it a little bit here. I'm going to go to face mode and extrude. We're going to extrude up. This is going to be my handle of my sword. We're going to make a sword. This is going to be where the hand guard comes out. And if I extrude again, move up and scale this out a little, scale this out a little bit. This is going to be the sword sword blade. And right now, I'm going to go ahead and just go into my vertex mode by right-clicking and going to vertex. And I'm going to grab those 4 vertices, hit the scale tool, scale them out a little bit to kind of make a point for my sword and make a little bit of a blade for the sword. Hit Q to get my select tool on, and then select this center one, get my move tool on, and drag it up for the point of my blade. And I'm going to go ahead, jump back into face mode by right clicking, going to face. I'm going to select the 2 faces on this side and the 2 faces on the other side. This is going to be the hand guard. And I'll hit extrude, pull them out, scale them in. Okay, now it's important when you're extruding in 2 opposite directions that you check and make sure that they're indeed scaling in the same direction when you scale. And it looks like they are, so I will go ahead and continue and extrude. I'm not really explaining all that much what I'm doing here, just because by now I'm going to assume that you kind of have the basics of modeling and you've had a chance to play around with the extrude tool especially. So let's see, I've got that. I'll extrude one more time here and we'll kind of round that off a little bit, and just for the heck of it, to make things difficult, I'll go ahead and click on these 4 faces and extrude. Now your sword doesn't have to look exactly like mine. I'm going to go ahead and scale them, I'm not going to move them just yet. Scale them in, scale them this way, and then I'm going to grab my move tool and move them up. That's horrible. That's horribly terrific. So I'm going to go ahead and leave my strangely shaped Thundercats looking sword here. I'm going to go ahead and go to Window, go down to UV Texture Editor. I'm going to right click on my object, go back to object mode, select it. You can see in the UV Texture Editor, these are Maya's automatically generated UVs. This is how it decided it was going to flatten that out, and it looks terrible. And it's not very easy to apply texture to this knowing which parts are the blade and whatever. So what we're going to do here is we're going to make our own UVs. We're going to do it all manually. Hooray! Anyway, I'm going to right click, go into face mode, tap the space bar, go into my top view because that's easiest to get half the sword since it's perfectly symmetrical. I'm just going to highlight the front half. Okay? So if you look in the 3D mode, I've just got the front half. And I'm going to jump into my front view so that I can see it from straight on. Because when you go up to create UVs and go to planar mapping and go to the little options box, a planar mapping is going to be applied from this view plane. So right now there's a number of different options in here. Right now I just want it on bounding box and I want it on camera so that it will use this camera as the plane. I want to keep image width and height ratio so it stays the same ratio. And then I'm going to hit apply. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit close, and you can see it makes a lovely little picture of my sword, which I'm then going to move off of the dark gray box. We'll get into that a little bit more in a minute. going to jump back into my top view. I'm going to right click, go to face mode. I'm going to select the back half of the faces so that you can see I've got the rest of this stuff. Again, jump into my front view, go to create UVs. Since we set the planar mapping properties, they should be the same. I'm just going to go to planar mapping, and indeed they are. You can see I have another one which I will move off to the side. I'm going to jump into my perspective view, go to object mode, select my object. You should have one for the front, you should have one for the back, and you shouldn't have any miscellaneous white pieces in here. If you have white pieces in here, it means when you did your mapping, you did not have exactly half, because the white pieces in here are miscellaneous pieces that weren't assigned new UVs. Now, in the UV editor, UV texture editor, this is the only place you can edit UVs. So I'm going to right click on my object and go to UV in my perspective view, and if I select a UV and hit the move tool, you get this warning: some items cannot be moved in a 3D view. So that's your key to tell you they can only be moved in here. Now, I have the front half, I have the back half, but there's one small problem. In the UV texture editor, using the mouse wheel to scroll in, holding Alt and dragging around, controls are exactly the same. The problem is, when you select, say, this UV, for instance, you can see that it's in this point. When you select the one directly behind it, it's in the same point. Those are called overlapping UVs, and those don't work very well if you want to apply a texture that wraps all the way around your object. So, I'm going to start unwrapping these, and then we'll start texturing it in the next video. In the UV texture editor, moving these UVs does not change the shape of your object. For instance, I have this one selected in the middle of my sword, okay, down this midline. So it shows up here. I'll put on my my move tool, and you can see that for some reason the manipulator's over here. So anyway, at any rate, I'm just going to drag it up, okay. Notice nothing changed out here. This is just the way the computer's mapping it out. And I'm going to go all the way around. I'm going to go all the way around the object, moving these out. Anything that overlaps, any vertex that you wouldn't be able to see looking at it from straight on. Okay. And actually, the reason why the manipulator's over here is because this midline, these UVs are on the UVs that go down this middle line are on both of my objects, so it's centering this pivot. So what I'm going to do is, with a UV selected, okay, I'm going to select a UV on my object, okay, right click, go to UV mode, select a UV, control, right click, okay, go where it says to shell. I will select this whole front half shell. I'm going to move it into my gray box. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. Control, right click, to shell, and move it over just so I can see what it is I'm working with. And now I'm going to go back about what I was doing. So I'm going to grab my UV. Okay, actually I need to do this one first. And I'm going to go ahead and move it out. Now, since the orientation of these are the same, I'm actually unwrapping both of them at the same time. Grab this UV, it selects the point in the middle here, it selects the point in the middle over here, and move them out. Now, you want to keep you want to keep it recognizable. You want to keep your object recognizable so you know where it is you're applying these textures to when you're creating it. But you don't want any weird crossed lines like I've got in this area right now. I'm just going to pull them all out and make sure that none of them cross. And I'm going to go around the entire outside of the object, anywhere they overlap. Now, keep in mind, like when I get here, this one overlaps. I have to move it out. But as you go up the sword, because of the shape, looking at it from the front, this one and this one don't overlap. So I don't have to do that one. I don't have to do this one. I don't have to do this one because although there's a UV right behind it, That one's on the back half. So just go around and pull all these beasts out. Anything where it overlaps. And we'll continue in the next movie.